Well, hello again, YouTube. AJ Shaver here with Shaver Sales, and I can't believe it, but this is the brand new HWP-150. This thing is huge. It's a beast. I can't wait to get it off the pallet and tell you all about it. I want to compare all three models, from the 120 to the 140 to this brand new 150. And you might ask, well, what makes the 150 so special? 22 inches worth of cutting diameter and a hydraulically adjustable splitter wedge. So stay tuned, we'll get the camera flipped around and we'll go from there. All right, so just real quick, just a couple simple things that you'll need. Basically, whenever these Halverson units ship, it pretty much looks just like this. You have an all oak pallet with some lag bolts that go down through it, some heavy duty band straps that go up and over, and so what we like to use is an impactor here with a 1/2 inch on it, and to cut a set of cutting pliers, a 3/4 inch wrench, and a 3/4 inch socket for the very same impact. And why you need all this, there's 1/2 inch lag bolts that go down into this oak pallet. It kind of goes all the way around to securely hold it for shipping. So once you back those out, there's usually 3 in the front and 2 brackets in the back that have to come off. Whenever the unit ships without the front arms on it, why we've done this is just so when we get the bill from shipping, it's more on the footprint that this thing takes up inside the trailer. So with these little legs that stick out there another 18 inches or so, it makes it a little bit over width for shipping. They can't get anything else next to it. So when we've made these removable now, it's just for the shipping purposes to it. So just to check everything when you get it, just make sure if you have the 2 holes here that you have 2 feet strapped to the deck. We just had one go to Virginia and the little feet weren't present, so I just need to mark that. They wouldn't be stored anywhere else other than strapped up on the units like this. So put this camera back in the tripod, get all these opened up, and then I'll show you where the owner's manual and your little 14-pin connection adapter and any in-cab harnesses might be on the units. All right, well, I wanted to get in here and show you this. We'll cut this open here just to get the band out of the way. And then the hoses will push off and over so we can get that hooked up with the skid steer. But it's down inside this tread plate where you see all the holes kind of punched through it. There are 5 1/2 inch bolts. There's 4 up here on top, and there's a sneaky 5th one that's around here on the side. Down inside this little compartment is where your owner's manual, if we send it with an in-cab harness or an extra saw chain, all that's going to be zip tied down in here. It's a very secure area, so the shippers have a hard time losing it if they can't see it. So that's why we put it down inside this. Now on the 140 or the 150, there's just 4 bolts right up here on top. I don't need that sneaky 5th one around that outside edge to hold everything down. So we'll get this opened up and I'll show you what's down inside the actual unit itself. All right, so this is down in the belly of the beast per se. So this is the harness for the 120 and the extra saw chains, and these saw chains are an 18HX078. There's 78 driver lengths on it. It's actually the same chain for the 120 and the 140. If you still have your handy dandy little cutters. Down here is the zip tie that holds the owner's manual. So we always ship it out with the little 14-pin adapter just in case your skid steer actually has that piece to it. And then this is the owner's manual for the 120 itself. while I have this opened up, your oiler is here. If you have to make any adjustments, it's on the bottom of that little piston pump over here. Right below it should be a 3/4 inch jam nut and a 3/8 or a 7/16. Clockwise tightens it and counterclockwise opens it up. But that's your oiler, your main valve assembly. This is all listed out inside the owner's manual, what everything does and what all the wires mean. And we'll get this button back up and get the rest of them off the pallet. All right, we'll see if we can get this all hooked up without knocking it too far off the pallet. All right, let's see. Table backwards. All right, I think I got the sequence inside the cab figured out, and I got the wires right. We had it on the J position, need to come up to the G position on the 14 pin. So let me fire this thing up, go through the sequence, and show you how it works. So with this Kubota, there's a parking brake unlock. There's that tone. We have to turn on the hydraulics. There's that tone. Turn on the 14 pin plug over there. There's that tone. And then we have to get the right direction of flow because this Halverson works in one direction only. Select that. Idle it up a little bit. Now we should be able to back the table up. Woohoo! Now this does have the length measuring guide in it just like the 140 does, so it's looking for that grabber arm to do something so it can back up. That's the automatic return. And the saw button should be this one. Sweet. And if that's the saw button, this should be the diverter valve, and then this should be the hydraulic wedge. Very cool. So what we're doing is the diverter valve switches the controls from the grapple. Open and close for your up and down. Push the button. And that works the wedge. So let me get the other ones off the pallet. We'll lay them out as a 3 view and go from there. All right, so let's kick this one off with the 120. Now the 120, how I pitch this one is kind of a homestead, farmstead, firewood startup, somebody with an outdoor boiler or two looking to do somewhere around, you know, 8 to 20, 30 cord of firewood as a minimum. I have guys that run a full-blown firewood processing business with these and knock out a couple hundred cords. So it all kind of starts off with this model. The base 120 actually comes as a fixed wedge. I've only ordered 2 with the fixed wedge over the couple hundred 120s that we've actually been through. I bring them in all the time as a manually adjustable 4-way. What that means, there's 4 or 5 different pin connections there, or pin points. You just remove this 1-inch pin at the very bottom. It's held on with an R-clip, like back here. And that'll go up and down. What's also nice about the adjustable wedge is that it is completely removable. So if you're feeding that outdoor stove and you just wanted to split rounds, you have this option. Just pull the wedge, cut your rounds, and go. It does have a standard 3.5-inch cylinder in it. It's a regular standard duty cylinder, so it tracks back and forth, you know, just like a traditional cylinder would, with no kind of a fast split or anything on it like you've seen on our brute force stuff before. Diameter wise, cutting distance, or cutting diameter, is right about 14 to 16 inches. And what the restriction is on that grabber arm itself. It just, if you can't get a good hold on it, it'll just kind of skid past and it gets really frustrating. So if you kind of aim for that 14 to 16 inch diameter, you won't be disappointed. The saw bar itself does have 20 inches worth of usable cutting distance on it, and what we use that for is if you pick up like a 20-footer or a 24-footer, you can buck that log in half, process the half that you're holding, and then run the other, and then pick up the second piece that you knocked off before. You can do that same thing on the other 2 models as well. Just kind of picture that halfway point, which on the log you should bring in right about here on any one of the 3 arms, because that's right where the saw is. So if you kind of picture that magical halfway point, just buck it in half, and again process that half that you're holding, and then grab that second piece. The other big difference between these is the height of the table, or what I'll call the pusher plate, right down here where the log actually gets pushed into the wedge. On this particular unit, it's 6 inches tall. On the 140 or the 150, then you're talking it's 12 inches tall. So I like running the 6-way wedge that you see there on the ground in either of these 2 units, because it's just a bigger plate that pushes the round through. If those top 2 ears on the 6-way wedge get above the table where the log sits on the 120, sometimes it'll mess up. Just being totally truthful here, I like running the 120 as a 4-way wedge. I do have customers that use a 6-way, but just a full disclosure, if you look here on where that 4-way is in relationship to the table, you're right about even with it. So if those top 2 ears come up, you've got to keep a good tensile strength inside the wood to keep it going through the 6-way. Well, your dead ash trees don't like the 6-way. They'll just kind of break off and get passed through as a 4-way, not as a 6-way. Full disclosure, just being honest here. We've done it, we've tried it, and just passing that along to you. What else is different? 960 pounds is about what the 120 weighs. The 140b weighs in around 1,600 and something pounds, depending which wedge you have in it. And then the new 150 is in that 1,700 to 1,800 pounds, again, depending on what wedge you decide to toss into it. So with the cutting diameter, again, you're looking 14 to 16 inches. Then with the 140, you're looking 16 to 18 inches. Again, the grabber arm is kind of the determining factor there. It's a little bit thinner of an arm on this one, a lot more reinforcement on it. Got some heavy welded in cleats on this versus just the plasma cut into it for grabbing the wood. Again, same bar on this one. Worth noting on the 140 unit, the motor is on the outside here. The 140 motor is external, while the 120 motor, I'll come back over here because I did forget about that, is on the inside. So when you look at the 120 unit, you kind of change this out more traditionally like your chainsaw that you're used to seeing around the farm or the ranch, versus the commercial piece over here on the 140. This does have the same, or a similar, I should say, 3.5-inch cylinder in it. It's kind of designed to handle the oil a little bit more efficiently. So, you know, cycle for cycle, by the end of the day, you will split more wood with the 140 than you will with the 120. The saw motor is a big upgrade. It's not just flipped around to the outside, but it is, you know, kind of the difference between working rounds with a 290 Farm Boss or ripping through something with a 661. The 120 being the smaller unit, the 140 being the better commercial saw motor. As you can see here, the 4-way wedge does sit down below the top of the table. So when you drop in that 6-way on this, you can use it really well. For splitting more retail size pieces into it, or out of it, I should say. The grabber arms are a little bit longer on the 140. Uses the same kind of drop-in feet. These are a little bit more on a steeper angle for getting underneath it a little bit better. Now on to the 150. Yes, the biggest difference at first glance is the hydraulically adjustable splitting wedge. Beyond that is the more impressive 22-inch worth of cutting diameter, and then a complete redesign on this grabber arm. This grabber arm will come up and down, so it's pinching the wood vertically versus coming forward and pushing the wood away, or can push the wood away. So I'm yet to put anything on this, so I can't say how it does or doesn't work. We just took it off the pallet here. Just want to do the walk around video before I scratched everything up and got sawdust on top of everything. So the unit is about 200 pounds heavier than the 140B. The 150 has this redesigned grabber arm on it. Let me come in here so I can show you what that is. Like I said, the pivot point becomes behind the saw guard now. We'll go over here to these other two so you can kind of see the difference. That pivot point is in line with the table. Same thing with this one. It is running the same saw motor as the 140 is running. This is the same bar actually off of the what is it, the 125 GS for the grapple saw. We've got a couple videos out that with that running on our Toolcat. And basically it's a very similar control setup on this 150 as what you've seen before with the in-cab controls. It's just what we're doing now is running a diverter button, which is if you're doing the in-cab, we're going to run that on the right-hand bottom button. And so as you squeeze that, then work the grabber arm buttons up and down, and that's what raises and lowers the wedge on this. Speaking of wedges, it is a very, very similar 6-way. I think the main body of it is about the same. We add on a little centering ring down here, so when it drops back down through the I-beam, it'll rest in there properly. Same kind of wedge setup, but then we weld on the additional bracket back here for hooking into the hydraulic cylinder. And then because we're handling the bigger diameter wood, we put a little shark fin up here on the top, and so we're grabbing that extra height out of that one. The wedge as it sits in the 150 is 24 inches high. As it sits in the 140, it's about 19 inches high, and then in the 120 it's right around 18 inches high. So kind of corresponding across all of them. Oh, splitting cylinder, I'm just looking here across it. The 150 has the upgraded cylinder already in it. It was always an option in the 140 unit. We could send it out from the factory that way, but it's coming standard in this 150. So I'll do one final walk by here so you can see them, and then we'll just close up with some notes. All right, and these are the 3 units from Halverson Wood Products, the 120, the 140B, and the brand new 150.